Okay, let's go. So as you can see from the presentation, today's topic we cover classes and objects. This is a very important topic in Java. So we want you to understand deeply the concept of classes and the objects. So now, so in this session, we let you understand what is a class and what are the objects, how you can declare your own class, including the declaration and the member variables, methods, and the constructors. And if you understand the class with all those details, we discuss how you create objects from a given class and how you can use the objects that you have created. So what is a class? In Java, class is defined as a blueprint. What is a blueprint? Blueprint, it's a kind of a template, something that we call a template. A blueprint or a template that we use to create object. So let's go straight to this example. If you have a class called a student, so this is called as a blueprint or template because each and every student you aim at having something like a name, then a marks, then two methods, one show details and another method calculate marks. So if you look at one student like who, Kabeluka, for example, this is a template that we can use to represent Kabeluka as a student. Name, Kabeluka, what is the marks? Maybe 25 out of 30. If you call the method, show details. Method, you remember, method in Java, it's like a function in other programming languages. So if you say show details, maybe it's going to print the name and the marks. And when you call maybe calculate marks, maybe it's going to calculate your marks. So it can produce this information for Kabeluka, can it produce the same information for Ndushabandi, can it produce the same information for Rutaisile, can it produce the same information for Stella, for Jean-Paul, for Rinda, for whatever, Jibat. So that's why we call it a template or blueprint to create an object. Student is a type, but when you talk about Jean-Paul, Rinda, Mutoni, Josue, whoever, those are the real objects. Those are the students. So that's the meaning. So in each class, we show the properties. The properties are like those fields, attributes. And also we show the methods. Methods are like functions. Okay, so we needed to show the properties and the methods that this type will have. So if you look at the student properties or attributes can be name or marks, but the methods can be something like a show details, calculate marks, and so on and so forth. So when you question. So when we create a class, we use the following syntax. This is our syntax for creating a class. So we go with a keyword class and we give a name, class name. Then we can do declaration, whether we declare some constant or some fields, variables, whatever. And there is a most important stuff here, what we call constructors. We discuss constructors for you to understand. Then we discuss methods. So I just want to remind you that among these things, something which is new for you, it's a constructor. Constant and the fields, those are the variables and the constant, you already know. Methods are like functions. Then what is a constructor? We'll see the meaning and the use of constructor in Java. So if you look at this example, class is student, we do class and we put the name of our class, which is a student. With open braces, we can define what we want our class to do. We can define the constant, variables, methods, even a constructor. So now this is our template. but of course these informations are missing. So how do you declare a field for a class? It is straightforward. Just we needed to remember, we needed to have a modifier, access modifier. So please, if you have a question, there is a way you can raise your hand. You should have option to raise. You should have option to raise your hand if you have some questions. And instead, if you have unmuted mic, unmuted microphone, please do so. Mute your microphone because I can hear some sounds coming in. So try to do that. So when we need to declare a field, it's the same as we declare variables in any program. So we need to start with access modifier. So you can see here it's optional. Because if, for example, I'm declaring a name as a string, there is no access modifier. But I'm declaring address as a string, I put access modifier as a private. So private means what? It's going to be accessible only within this class. I'm declaring age as integer, and the access modifier, I'm making it a public, which means it can be accessed by any other class. And also protected, I'm declaring max as a double with access modifier protected. So protected means what? We haven't yet covered the concept of packages, but this one, which is declared as a protected, can only be seen or can only be accessible within the classes within the same packages, sorry. So we haven't yet covered the package, but we are giving some examples for this syntax, how you declare variables, fields, whatever for a given class. Okay, so the way we declare a constant, we introduce a keyword final. So when you declare anything as a final, that means the value cannot be changed. So this is what we refer to as a constant in Java. So if you look at this example, we have a class called a cycle, and this class we have a PI, which is a 3.14. The type is double, and when we put a final or static a final, it means the value you are putting in here will remain unchanged. So that's the meaning of a constant actually. All right. So now, how do you declare the methods for a given class? You remember methods are like a function. So after declaring your variables or your fields here, like this one applies, then a name, applies is a double, name is a string, private. We have a function here, or we have a method which is called so just give me 1 second, please. I need to talk to this young boy who is disturbing me. So I was trying to tell my son not disturb me again. So this is one method which is called car price. So calculate price, and it is accepting one parameter which is discount as a double, and it is going to return the price because the return type is a double. It's going to return the existing price minus discount times the price. Maybe it's a 2% discount. If it was 200, it will return a 200 minus 2% of 200. And then you have another method which does not return, and the method is called display product name, and simply it tells you the name of the product which is specified here. So we'll be doing some examples to understand the methods, members, fields, constant, something like that. So I want to see if we can discuss the constructors. So we are still here, the syntax for declaring a method. As you have seen, you start with access modifier. That's why we have a public access modifier. Then the next is return type, which is something like here, double. It's going to return double. Then you have the name of your method, which is like a calculate perimeter. All right, we can pass some parameters. In this case, there is no parameter or there is no argument. Then we close parentheses, we open brace, and we write whatever whatever you want our program to do, our function to do, our method to do. In this case, we are going to calculate perimeter, which is radius times 2 times pi, and we return the same value, the computed value. All right. So I wanted to come to the constructors because, as I said, this is something that you haven't seen before. A constructor looks much similar to method, but there is one difference. The constructors use the same name of the class. That's number one. Number two, the constructors have no return type. They look like a method, but they use the same name as the class. Also, they have no return type. So the constructors are used in the creation of object. When you create object, you can use a constructor to set initial values. Eventually, to initialize your object, you can use a constructor. So to initialize your object, to set initial values to the object's fields, and of course allocate memory. And the memory which is allocated to your object by using a constructor, you can claim this value later using a garbage collection. So we have three types of constructors. Number one, no argument constructor. You don't pass any parameter. Number two, we have a parameterized constructor. Those are the constructors with some parameters or some arguments. And the number three, we have what we call default constructor. This is when you create a class and you don't specify any constructor. So that is what you call a default constructor. This is, for example, this is a constructor which does not take any argument. So zero parameter, and you can see the way it looks. We have a class called a student. As you remember, we said the constructor will have the same name as your class, and there's no return type. So student, whatever name equal to Kamana, okay, this is a constructor. So when you create a class called a student, initial value, it will have this initial value called Kamana. I mean the name of a student, because there is one field for student. If you have two fields, you can put all the values. Eventually, you are initializing. You are setting initial values to any object of a student class. We come back to this later. So if you look at the constructor, which takes some parameters, yeah, can be one or more. So we have a parameter here called the name of a string type. All right. So you can do whatever you want, but what you want to say here, we want whatever the name you pass here, whatever the value you pass for this name, to be the value for this field that you have in your class as well. So whenever you create a new object or for student, you need to pass a parameter which is going to be like initial value for this field. Okay. So when you say the default constructor means what? You do not have to create this constructor. So it will be created by compiler. Of course, in any situation when there is no constructor which is declared. So you declare a class like this one. but when you compile it, the compiler will generate a default constructor like this one. Zero argument, so there's nobody, but the but the compiler will make sure that this kind of default constructor is created. Okay, there is a concept of overloading. We saw method overloading, but also we have a constructor overloading. If you remember what we said about a method overloading, you have the same name for your method, but different parameters. So here's the same. You can have many constructors with the same name, of course, because the constructor will have the same name as your class.
Yeah.
Guys, sorry, my network
No, but
was cut. So let me know if you were together with me on the constructors. I was explaining the concept of constructor overloading. So you still see my screen?
No,
no.
not yet.
Not. You don't see my screen. No one is sharing, right? Me.
Okay.
You guys, some of you are sleeping.
Yeah, I'll see it right now.
So you see the screen. So we're on this slide. I was explaining the constructors. Okay. So
Yes.
okay, so the concept of a constructor overloading, you can have two or more constructors with the same names, because you need to remember that if you have what you call a constructor, you must have the same name as your class. So if you have many constructors,
Yeah.
we always have the same name, but probably different in terms of the parameters, right? So when you have such a situation, this is what you call constructor overloading. Okay. So if you create object, if I call student with 0 parameter, I'm referring to this. If I call student with 1 parameter, I'm referring to this one, because you have many constructors with the same names, but probably different parameters. Then, if you understand a class, what is an object? You remember, we said that a class is like a blueprint or template for an object. So what is the object? Object is instance of class. So which means what? It is created from a class. So remember from a DBMS, when you're talking about employees is nothing but something like a class or type. But when you say Jean-Baptiste, for example, as one employee, when we say Joyeuse as another employee, this is instance of my employee class. This is instance. So the same, when you say class, it's represent a template or blueprint. But when you talk about someone like John, someone like Aris, those are real objects. Those are real objects. In other words, you can create a class once, or class is one, but you can have so many objects. Okay, we can define it the way we need our student to look like in terms of the data, in terms of services. We do that once, but we can have so many students. So each student represents an instance of our class. So the way we create the object, using a new keyword, of course, followed by the class constructor. If you haven't created any constructor, then that will be default constructor. So for example, if you look at the student class, now you can say a concept whereby you can have more than one class in one program. So you have your class here, student, with one variable, which is name. And you have another class, and you consider this as main class. Within this main class, you have a main method, because any execution of the program will start from a main method. So we need to create object of student type. So yes, we specify the type as the name of the class. Then we put the name here. Then we use new keyword. So this is a reference variable which is declared using the type student, and the object will be created from class student, and that object which will be created will be assigned to a variable s, which is of type student as well. So when you use the object, we can reference the field of that object inside objects class. So within the class, all right, so when you look at you are given a class like a student here, you have a variables like a name. So the point here is how you can access the field of your object, of the object of this class inside the same class. So the syntax here is very simple. Since it is within that class, you simply write the name of the field. Like here, I'm accessing this variable here. This is when I create a new object, this is a field of my class's object. I'm trying to access it inside the same class. So I simply have to write the name of the field. But what if you are outside the class? When you are not in the same class, like here, this is one class, this is another class. So to be able to access this field here, I needed to, number one, to have my object of the class created. Then I use the name of my object dot the name of variable. Okay, this is the same even for the methods. You will see when you reference the method inside the same object class. For example, this is a class product, and inside this class, if I needed to access the price, that's fine. I simply needed to write a price, as you can see here. So what about the method? This is method, this is another method. Inside this method, I needed to call this method. Since it is within the same class, I simply write the name of the method, and of course pass the required parameters. If it is outside my objects class, like here, this is in one class, but I'm going to access it in another class. So definitely I need to create object to create object of my class. Then from the instance that I've created, I can make a call to the method of that particular class. Okay. So how do we invoke a constructor? So we invoke a constructor, we make a call to a constructor every time when an object is created. So if you look at this example, we don't have a constructor, okay? There is no explicit constructor in this class here, okay? So when we create object, the default constructor will be invoked. That's why we always create that object like this one. So the name of the object, then new keyword. All right, okay. So if we invoke a parameterized constructor like this one, this is a product constructor. We pass a double, price as a double, all right? And we make sure that whatever the value we pass here is going to be assigned to this value. This is why we put this keyword, because they have the same name. So we need to specify the value we pass here is the value we want to give this one. Okay, so we use this keyword, this the column name equal to the passed variable. So to call this constructor, what you need to be aware of, just check the number of arguments or the number of parameters. So when we call or when we create a new or when we invoke this constructor, we need to be mindful that we are going to pass one parameter which is of double type. All right. So then, if you have a more parameters, still is the same. So here we have two parameters. We are passing in name and the price. Name will go into this one. That's why we do this dot fill the name. And the price will go into this one. That's why I have a price assigned to this one. So when we make it, when we invoke this constructor, we need to remember that we give it two parameters. That's something like name and the price. All right. So this is a very interesting example. We have created the arrays of objects. So which means what? Many objects. So we have a class called the book, for example, book class. So which means you can have many books. So in my many class, I can initialize, I can declare, number one, I can declare array of many objects. So it will have up to 2 objects, and each object is of what type? Book type. So then each object can have initial values. So what does it mean? It means in this class here, we have a constructor which takes one parameter, and that is the name of the book. So you can think of having another stuff like a book here, which takes as a string, it takes the name of the book, okay? And of course you have the member here, the string name. So if you do so, then you have something like this name equal to whatever the name you pass here, okay? So then you invoke your constructor like this one. But you have created the number and you have created the array of those objects. Then each object is initialized. So probably if you have like a class inside your constructor or method, you can call it to display these values. I think at this stage we may need to do some examples because it's too much so far. So let's do some examples, maybe for you to better understand this one. I don't know how many. This card. All right, this is slide number. What is slide number? Oh, slide number 25. No, 23. That's fine. Let's do some examples. So this is the session number. What is session number? Okay, can check from here. Officially, this is session number 8. So today we call it session number 9. So I will make a class. Maybe let me call it a student to make your life easier. So this class called the student, number one, we are going to have, I hope you can see my screen. Otherwise you can say no. At least one yes.
Not yet, but
At least one yes.
Yeah, we can see the
Yes.
screen.
yes,
Okay. So the members here can be like, let's say, int the age of a student, int marks of a student, maybe string, first name of a student, string, last name of a student, maybe int semester of a student. These are the fields of my class student. I can have a constructor. So if I invoke string class when I want to create object, there is a constructor which does not take any parameter. I'll have the right to do it. Or I will have I will call when I invoke student, when I create object of a student, I will initialize it with the values. Maybe I will provide the age, I will provide the marks, I will provide semester. So since they have the same name as my class name, I will simply indicate what I need. I need the value I pass for age to be stored in this age of my class. Whatever I pass as the marks, I want to be stored in the marks of this class. And whatever I pass as a semester, I want it to be stored in a semester. So maybe I have another constructor which takes all the parameters. So yes, here I will put a string, first name, and another string, last name. And I make sure that those values will go into my classes as well. First name, this, last name. So this is my three constructors. And since they have the same name, you can simply remember that this is a concept of constructor overloading because they have the same name, but different parameters, of course. So if you needed to display maybe those information for student, why not? You can have maybe public static, okay, public void, display or info, whatever the name you can give. We don't pass any parameter, but we want this method. We want this method to display this information. System out int line. I wanted to have like, let's say, first name of a student. This first name of a student, because I'm within the same method. Okay, you remember? I simply need to write the field, okay? Because I'm within the same class. Then I do last name, yes. Then simply I do last name. Then I do what? Age. Then I do what else? Marks. So eventually marks should be something like a double. So we can make marks double. It's okay, you can make it integer, but normally marks will be something like a floating point number. So I think it's better to make it double. So I go with double. I will say max. Then I will say, what is missing? Semester. So every time, this is my class, every time I call the method like info, it will show me the values for first name, last name, age, marks, and semester. So this is one class, but this is not my main class. So I can go down and have my main class, and I will give it a keyword, public class. What is the name of the class? Or simply I give a class name. So it's within one program, class. Remember, we call it session 9. And within this class, I'm going to have my main method. I'm going to have my main method, which is public static void main. I give arguments. All right. This is in my class. So now, since you have many constructors to create new instance of a student, to create a new student, because this is a template for student, this is what you have. All right. You can have a more method. You can even have like a show, let's say another method like a public void show grade, for example. So when you call this method, it simply gives you the grade of a student, like a system out, print line, first name, we show the name, and we put the grade because the point here is the grade. Grade is, okay, marks. So you can have a number of methods, right? So this will serve as a template. Any object that we create of a student type will have option to initialize your student with this information, either 0 information, or you give age, marks, and semester, or you give or. Then you call this method to see all the information, or call this method to see the grade of a student. So now we can go ahead and initialize a student. So the way we create an instance or object, we indicate the type of object. So the type here is a student, and I can give any variable like st. Then you remember we go with new keyword. If I go with this one, I'm referring to this. There is no value at all, okay? So which means if I do st, because you remember we said if you need to access this method outside this class, you go with this syntax. You use the object name dot something like this one. So you have no information. If I do st and do, for example, show grade, so probably what you can see is the default values. So now let's run this program and see what happens. But definitely you are referring to this one. There is no initial value. You get simply null. You get. Let's see what you get. So this is our session 9. Session 9, example number 1. Session 9, number 1. .java. So now let's see if it is there. Okay, yes. Java compiled. Session 9, example number 1. Okay, we have no problem at all. Then we do Java session 9. Okay, could not find or load many class session 0901. Don't we have? Let's see the name of the class. Yes, it's 09. We should say 0901. Okay, let's compare again. Okay, now let's see. So now you can see all the values are simply null because we invoke the constructor. Maybe this is on the file. We invoke the constructor, so which does not initialize any of those values. So let's go ahead and invoke another constructor. So let's make something like st1. Again, it's another way, but we are calling now the second one. So which takes the 3 parameters. One is age, like a 20. Next is max, like 16.5. And the last one is a semester, maybe semester 6. So I'm invoking this one here with the 3 parameters. And again, I call these two methods. But I'm calling these two from this object, st1. So I put st1 here and st1 here, and then we run the program and see what happens. So let's compile and let's run the program. Now you can see the first one, everything is in R. The second one, we initialize the 3 variables, age, max, and semester. All right. So we initialized age, max, and semester. So then the function to show the grade is showing 16. All right. So then, if you wanted to call the constructor with all the information, which is this one, that's fine. You can go ahead and have another student, st2, for example, new student, age, max, first name, last name, and the semester. So if you make a call, if you can reference to those methods, okay, remember you do st2, you do st2 here, okay. So you see what is happening. It's you get the value for every variable in your class. So this is the situation here, the last one. So this is okay with constructor overloading. If you needed to access individual member of your class, still you can do that. Maybe you can try this and see out print line, do st2, for example, dot, maybe dot name or dot max, something like this one. You see what will happen because we are referring to this one. And when you access the member, you are going to get 17.6. That's the max. So you can understand how you access the members of the class using your object in another class, how you can do it, or how you can do within the same class. This is when you are in the same class. This is when you are in another class. So let's check and see what you get. You see, this is so you can see this is the one which is coming here. All right. So we come back to more examples after this, but I want you to understand, of course, this is the array of objects. Okay, we can make array of object as well. So let's make it as a second example. I will keep with this one and I do another example. So remember, this is 2 now. So the class, because it's a template, the class remains the same. Our class remains the same. What we can do, we play with this one. So if we needed to have a collection or array of objects, yes, This is individual class, not array of classes. So let me do this. Let me remove this completely and now do student. I need to make sure it's array, and I can call it a student. For example, if I want, I call it a students. And what I do as new, this is a new student, but I needed to provide also this because it's going to be array. Maybe it's a 3 or 4 students or 5 students, no matter. Then what I need to do, each student, I needed to either call it with either of these constructors. This one with 0 initialization, this with 3 variables initialized, or this with all of variables initialized. So I'll go with this one because I need to do some other stuff on this one so that we can understand it better. So for every, maybe I can use a short name because I'm going to write it again and again. So maybe for the first student, since it is array, I put index 0. So for first student, I will say this is a new student. I'm now calling this constructor and I can provide the values. The age is going to be 16, for example. Max, I'm going to give 18.5. First name, Mukiza. Last name, Jean-Baptiste. Semester 6. Because there are 5 students, I need to do it for all other students. Copy. This is a second student. This is a third student. This is a fourth student. This is a student number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the 5 students. Student number 2, number 3, number 4, and the number 5. So do they have the same age? Probably no. Maybe this is a 20. Maybe this is 19. Maybe this is a 26. Maybe this is 22. What about the max? Maybe this is 19. Yeah, 19.0, for example. Maybe this has a 20 out of 20. Maybe this student has 14.5. And maybe this student has 16.8. So the names, this is Mukiza, this is Mugema, Bosco. And this guy is in semester 8. This is this is Muneza, Valence. This is in semester 4 or 5. This is Munana areas. Of course, we need to remember gender balance, semester 7. And this is who? Let's look at the people who are participating. This is Linda. Okay, this is Linda. What is Linda? Linda Kimanuka. I don't know. I'm guessing. Yeah, this is Linda. This is Linda Kimanuka, and this is semester, maybe semester, which is semester? Semester 4. All right. So now for each student here, you can call either of this method. Okay. So for example, if we need to see information of Linda, we can do st4.info. So we call method from there. Okay. So we'll be able to get the information. If you need to see the grade of Linda, we can see st4 dot show grade. So I'm calling this method here. Let's see what happens when we run this program. I'll save. And we come here, we simply put 2. And we come here, we simply put 09 is 02. All right, this is yes, Winda, Kimanuka, Edge, Max, Semester, and the second method to show the name and the grade. This is what we get. So you don't see there is no space here. That's why the first name needed some space like this one, and after we needed another space. So you can see now. So I hope you have a general understanding of this stuff. Now let's see the other magic that you can do. Yes. You can pass object reference. Wow, you can pass object as a reference. That's very interesting. So for example, yes, rather than passing a parameter of int, string, whatever, you can pass a parameter of object. Okay, so we come to this also and make some examples. Then you can also return object from method, like here, you pass so many students and you return a student with the highest marks. We do that in the third example. And finally, you can return array of objects. So rather than returning one student, you can return a collection of students. So we can do those examples, then that will make it like a 4 or 4:30, something like that. We end the class over there. So let's go with example number 3 and see how you can pass a student. Yeah. You can pass object as a reference. So now, if you need to pass object as a reference, what does it mean? Let's say, for example, let's have another class here. We pass a student, and based on the student we passed, the method will tell us whether the student is doing well or not. So we check the grade, for example. So we can do it here because in the main class, you can have so many methods as well. So, but the main method, it's a must, it must be there. So let's have another method here. And this method, we call it, yes, public. Okay, we don't need to return a student. We simply need to show whether a student is passing or not. For it, maybe we call it a check passed. So we pass it a student as a parameter for any student we pass, and this method, you remember each student will have the marks, whatever. We can say something like st marks. If the marks are greater than 15, for example, yes, why not? We say you are doing well. We are not returning. Print the line. You are doing well. If not, that means you are not doing well. If not, so what we need to do, we can do system out, print line, put more effort, something like this one. So the point here is how you pass object as a reference. So now if I need to know if any student is doing well, or if a student needs to work hard, what I need to do, this is within the same class. So I don't have to use something like this one. I can straight make a call to the method like check passed. Who do you want to check? If you need to check for render, you can pass this render information because the render is stored in st4. Okay. So let's check. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is example number 3. That's fine. So now let's compile. Oh my God, there is a problem here. Check a student. Yes, cannot be referenced because it's inside the static method. We needed to have something like a public static as well. Public static void, because there is another static method. So now let's go. Then we go with Java session 0903. Could not find or load the main method session 0903. What is, did we edit it in the class, in the program? Oh, we did not edit. It should be 3 here. Now it's okay. Okay, now let's do Java session 0903. Now you can see Rinda's grade is a 16.8. She's doing well, okay? So the point here is trying to understand how you can pass the object as a reference. Now let's do more. Let's have a method which returns a student who has the highest marks. Highest marks. We call this as example number 4. Okay, so how do we know if a student has the highest marks? All right, so we need to have, eventually we don't need to have RH, we need to navigate through this students, and we find who has the highest marks. So to do so, we need to have assume that you have a student who has the highest score. So this is our student. And if you want, you can assume this to be like a student number 1. So let's do this. And after initializing all the students, let's say the one with the highest marks is the first student. Then we need to check. How do we check if this has the highest marks? We need to iterate. We need to iterate through all the students. st.len, yes, I++. We need to iterate. How do we iterate? So we check for every position if sti from 0 to whatever. So we are checking the marks. If the marks of this student, when the first iteration I represent 0, which means we are talking about Mukiza. When I equal to 2, we are talking about Mugema. When I equal to 2, we are talking about Muneza. When I equal to 3, we're talking about Munana. And when I equal to 4, we are talking about Linda. So for any student, if the marks is greater than, highest, all right, this is if, must be inside if. If marks is greater than highest, dot marks, all right, that means the student who has the highest marks is not the one. So the highest will be that student whose marks is greater than the highest. So we'll iterate like this one until you finish looping all the values. Okay, this is the loop, we close it here. This is if, we close it here. So now, do we need this? Maybe we can show this information for the one who has the highest marks. So how do we get this with the highest marks? We simply need to make a call to display a function. We no longer need this here. So The highest will be stored in the highest, which is also of a student type. Then we can call, what do we want? Maybe info. We want to have this information displayed. So when you look at this one, the guy with the highest marks, I think it's this guy. I think so. So let's see, we should be able to display this information for this guy, Moneza variance. But let's see, this is example number 4. And we make sure it's number 4 here. Okay. We put 4. Okay, then we say Java session 0904. All right, the guy with the highest marks is a variance, you can see here. All right, so the last example, example number 5, let's look at the object. Let's try to return the collection of object. We return an array of object. So we can create a simple scenario. Let's put 5 here, number first. The simple scenario, we have these students here. Let's have another method which return the sorted students. Maybe we sort them based on their marks. The one with the highest marks comes first, and the one with the lowest marks comes last. So we need another method. Let's call it maybe public static student. So it will return a collection of student. It will return array of student. Maybe we call it sorted. And also we pass as a parameter, we pass the collection of students, array of students. Then it returns the sorted list of students. It returns the sorted list of students. So what we do, yes, we need maybe array of student. We need array of student. Let me call this one here. I call it students, and this array will be STS. Yes, because we are going to sort this one. Also, we are going to have a temporary variable, which is of type of student as well. So what we need to do, we make sure that the students we pass, we can store them in this variable, no problem, students. Then we need to sort those students. So existing logic for sorting, int I equal to 0, I less than sts dot length. Then we do I plus plus. Okay, we do this. So we go with the second loop counter into g equal to I plus 1. So we start from the next value. And again, we check up to the length of the array, th g plus plus. Okay, this is another loop. We can check some condition inside this loop. Okay, so we check 2 consecutive values. If the first value, okay, if the first value based on the marks, of course, if a student at I is less than j, if I is 1, j is 2. So we needed to swap these 2 values. If this value, which is smaller than the g value, and we're looking at the marks, of course, if this value is less, no, it's greater than, because we are sorting. So it depends. We are sorting from the smallest to the highest. If it is the smallest to the highest, we do not want this student with the higher marks to come before his next student. So if this marks for this student and the marks of the next student, I don't know, the variable is marks. Okay, marks, yes. If it is like this one, so what does it mean? We need to exchange these two values. I don't know if you remember this concept. Let's try to see here in PowerPoint. What is our pen? I'm trying to find a pen. So I need to write. Pointer option pen. Come on. I can't see the pen. I wanted to write. Okay. What is the pen? Pen. Come on. Let's see. So let's hide this stuff. I need to see the pen. So sorry. So this one, small, automatically hide. Okay. Oh, let me put it on top or left. Okay. So the pen is here. So if this is my students, there is a student at this position 0, and there's a student at position 1, student at position 2, student at position 3, student at position 4. We don't have a position 5. So this student here has a first name, last name, marks. We are looking at the marks. So, and this student also have a marks. So if the marks of this student at I is greater than the student marks at I plus 1, that means we need to swap. This student will come here, and this student will come here. So this is what we are trying to do. So I'm trying to say here, what is my notepad? Okay, I need to minimize. Now everything is where? That's fine, it's here. If the marks for student I is greater than the marks for student D, that means we need to make sure that that we store in our temporary variable the marks of, okay, we don't store the marks, the entire object. We swap the entire object. So STI, we move into temporary. Then what was in STI, STI will take what is in STG, that is the next value. Okay, something like this one. This is a swap. And finally, in STCG, we put what was in a temp. I think this logic is, you should be familiar with this simple logic. And then, yes, we're done. It's a swap actually. So this one closing brace is missing actually. So we need another closing here. So, okay, this is closed here. This is closed here. And this is closed here. Oh, we put more on this one, okay? But what we need to return a sorted array, because it's a collection. We need to return a collection. So at the end, we need to return our array. So which we assume to have a sorted list of values. So if you need to check if it does the job, yes, we need to make another declaration here, another array, maybe to accept the sorted one, whatever, sorted or sort, whatever the name you can call. And when we call our method, because it returns the sorted one, we say sort equal to the name of array here, which is sorted. We use the name here, sorted, and we pass array to be sorted. Array to be sorted, it's st. Array to be sorted is a st. So if really it does a sort, we can iterate and print this element, and you see if they are sorted based on their marks. So we can do int I equal to 0, I less than than a sort length, I plus plus. It doesn't matter. We are simply going to call sort of I dot, I think we have info method. So if our array is sorted, we are going to see this information displayed, but in a sorted order. In a sorted order. So let's see. Let's run this program, save. Let's compile, that is number 5. Oh, sorry, we need to compile it first. Number 5. And we can do session 0905. All right, so let's check if the marks are sorted. What are the marks? Wow. So there are 5 students, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we start with 14, 16, 18, 19, and 20. All right, I think it works. So we can try in ascending order, whatever. So to avoid any confusion, please let's remove this one, because this one was showing the marks for the highest. We no longer need this one. We are just interested to see if our list is sorted. Maybe one more check. Okay, great. So the marks are sorted. Our students are sorted based on their marks. So I think that's what we wanted you guys to understand. I know it's not easy for you because you are struggling to get internet, you are learning from home, but in either case, we need to make sure that we are progressing. So I think I can stop by this one. It should be enough. I'm stopping my record.